It's July 1943, and through the midst of the Salamalau-Lay campaign during the Second World War, a lone Australian soldier emerges from the jungle of Mount Tambu, carrying a wounded American soldier. Once he reaches the safety of Allied positions, he turned around and headed back up the mountain, coming back once more with another American, and then another, and another. All in all, he's officially credited with saving the lives of 10 Americans. In doing so, he became an instant folk hero. Today, we hear the Ballad of the Bull, Corporal Leslie, Bull Allen. Welcome to the I Was Only Doing My Job podcast. My name's Ross Manuel, and I'm an amateur historian and writer, and this week I look into the life, service, and historical impact of the Bull, Leslie Charles Allen. Leslie Allen was born on the 9th of November 1916 in Ballarat, Eastern Victoria. He's the son of Clarence Walter Allen and Ruby Ethel Robinson, and aside from his sister Violet, not much is known of any other siblings, as he and Violet were sent to an orphanage at a young age following an upbringing marred by domestic violence brought on by the effects of the Great Depression. He would end up being fostered by his aunt, Mrs. H.L. Allen, who had 4 sons of her own, Percy, Herbert, Ronald, and Albert, who, like Leslie, would serve with their father, Herbert Leslie Allen, in the Second World War. From the age of 12, Leslie worked as a labourer, mostly on dairy farms around Ballarat, to support his foster family and to pay for his sister's training as a nurse in the Bethesda Hospital in Richmond, Victoria. He enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 19th of April 1940 at the age of 21, giving his middle name as Clarence and his date of birth as the 9th of September 1918. There he joined D Company, 2nd 5th Battalion, as a stretcher bearer and was sent to the Middle East. Just as a side note, the 2nd in 2nd 5th was for clerical reasons to denote the unit as part of the 2nd Australian Imperial Force and not being part of the part-time Citizens Military Force, better known as the militia. At 180 centimeters tall with broad shoulders, he was considered physically imposing amongst the men of his company, but well liked due to his wicked sense of humour and sporting abilities. In fact, the only people of the 2nd 5th that may not have liked him were the officers, where he showed traditional larrikinism and disdain for authority. With his loud laugh and booming voice, colleagues in the company would report that you could hear him a mile off. Bull was thus one of the battalion's most recognisable and one of its most popular characters. He gained the nickname Bull while on the sporting pitch for charging down the opposition during battalion football matches like a bull in a china shop, which, considering his stature, his most definitely would have been an imposing sight. That very sportsman's stamina was easily transferred to the battlefield while in the Syrian campaign, when on the 10th and 11th of July 1941, during the battalion's attack on Calda in modern-day Lebanon, while under heavy shell fire. He worked through the night tending to the wounded men of his company, and then the following morning, even though fatigued, walked 10 kilometers to secure transport for them. That prowess, however, was not without a cost, as he was admitted to the hospital for anxiety-based neurosis, a condition what we'd now consider to be PTSD. He was, however, able to return to the battalion, as the 2nd 5th was recalled to Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, in March 1942, before continuing to Australia in August that year for resupply and redeployment to Papua in October. On 17th of December 1942, he contracted malaria, but was able to rejoin his unit on the 22nd for the defense of Wau in January-February 1943. It is in the defense of Wau the legend of Bull Allen starts to appear, and it's pretty impressive. During an attack on Crystal Creek, where he is credited in the papers for carrying a wounded Australian soldier 1,000 yards in a Superman effort, official accounts of the battle tell a slightly different but no less important feat of what became known as the Battle of the Slaughterhouse. On the 7th of February, D Company, the 2nd 5th, was attacking a Japanese machine gunner position near Crystal Creek, when a platoon led by Lieutenant Taylor was pinned down out in the open. With 3 wounded and 2 dead, including Lieutenant Taylor, Private Allen rushed out into the open, and in the face of incoming machine gun fire, pulled one of the wounded, Corporal Kelly, over his shoulder in a fireman's carry and proceeded over 200 yards uphill to the company headquarters. While he was unwounded in his action, his uniform and haversack bore several bullet holes from the constant machine gun fire. On the following day, 18th Platoon from the 2nd 5th was surrounded and ambushed by snipers. 1 member was killed and 3 more wounded. Bull once again moved forward and made 3 separate trips, recovering all 3 wounded men, 2 of which he had to drag 30 yards to cover. During the course of these 2 engagements, Bull had been wounded 4 times, but none were severe enough to warrant him leaving his unit. For his actions in this battle, he was awarded the military medal and promoted to corporal. His citation read, "Private Allen's bearing and his untiring efforts in tending to the wounded and helping with rations and stores were an inspiration. Following Crystal Creek, he was admitted to hospital several times for exacerbation of malaria and spent most of 1943 in and out of hospital. Returning to his unit, he participated in the Battle of Mount Tambu in July 1943 as part of the larger Salam-Alau-Leh campaign. On the 16th of July, Australian troops secured part of the southern slopes of Mount Tambu. In response, the Japanese commenced a counterattack that night, but was repulsed, with Australians suffering 39 casualties, including 14 killed. The Japanese would suffer heavy casualties, with approximately 350 men wounded and killed in the 8 attacks they attempted before dawn. Australian forces would hold the line until the 28th of July, when American forces landed in New Guinea, and the 1st Battalion, 162nd Infantry Regiment, was pushed into the attack to replace the Australian forces on the 30th. Australian mortar teams and stretcher bearers remained in the line to assist, but did not take an active role in the battle. Owing to his experience in the jungle, Bull stayed in the line, and this is where he becomes a folk hero. Like the Australians, the American forces failed to take the summit, and suffered 50 casualties to near constant Japanese sniper, mortar, and machine gun fire in what historian David Dexter describes as one of the most difficult and unpleasant areas ever to confront troops. The land around Tambu was muddy, steep-sloped, and under constant Japanese attack, in which 2 US medics were killed trying to bring the wounded to safety. Lance Copeland, an Australian mortar operator who had been present, said in a 2016 interview that Allen was now the last stretcher bearer left to assist the 162nd. At this point, Allen, who was in the area as a part of this residual Australian presence and probably exhibited the same spirit he previously displayed at Calder and Crystal Creek, voluntarily entered the battle space alone and brought back a wounded American soldier, then went back for another, and another. Each time he went back for another rescue attempt, the soldiers on the line would make bets on whether he would return. Allen would complete this task several times, and while official reports would vary between 10 and 12 Americans rescued, accounts from eyewitnesses in the field report to up to 17 American battle casualties would be carried out to safety one by one on the back of a lone Australian from Ballarat before he collapsed from exhaustion. When he recovered, he had to be physically restrained from re-entering the battlefield. His hat and sleeves bore bullet holes from the repeated machine gun grazes, but he himself was relatively unharmed during the battle. It is during this battle that the most known photo of Allen was taken. It depicts a tall, broad-shouldered Australian, steely eyes set in a determined expression, carrying the helpless body of a, by comparison, diminutive American soldier over his shoulder. War correspondent Gordon Short took the iconic image during one of Allen's repeated trips back to friendly lines. This particular American had been knocked unconscious by a mortar bomb, and his identity has now been lost to the ages. Bill Carty, a cameraman who accompanied Gordon Short, recalled a gigantic man striding up Mount Tambu like he was on a Sunday jaunt, describing Allen as a huge man with obvious physical and emotional strength, perhaps born of a difficult childhood. And difficult it was. When the 2nd Fifth was rotated back to Queensland in December 1943 for training and resupply, the effects of these Superman efforts had started to show. While he never showed fear on the battlefield, the war clearly affected him. Allen went absent without leave for 11 days, to the point where a warrant for his arrest had been issued, but was cancelled when he rejoined the unit. As a punishment, he was docked 5 days' pay, and in January 1944, he had an altercation with an officer. He was court-martialed and demoted back to private. It was at this time that his health continued to deteriorate, with his malaria continuing to plague him and suffering from constitutional temperamental instability, another term for what is now considered post-traumatic stress disorder. His military career came to an end, and he was discharged as medically unfit on the 10th of September 1944. The war did not end for Allen right away, and he spent 6 months recuperating on an uncle's farm in Warren Help, having lost the ability to speak. When he recovered, he met and married Jean Elizabeth Floyd, a former army nurse, on the 23rd of April 1949. One of the well-wishers to the happy couple would be Eleanor Roosevelt, wife of United States President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The two would continue to correspond until the First Lady's death in 1962. The Allens would have a daughter and 3 sons, and they would name the daughter in Eleanor's honor. This connection to the United States did not stop with the First Lady, with Allen repeatedly being offered roles to appear in movies in Hollywood, depicting his actions and other historic deeds, which he would usually turn down. When news of his exploits started to reach the media, he met it with timidity. When asked, he would deflect attention to other Australian stretcher bearers or simply state, "I was only doing my job." While only doing his job would earn him the United States Silver Star, the third highest medal for bravery in the United States system, and the highest award that can be issued to a non-American. The citation read, "For gallantry in action in Mount Tambu, New Guinea, on the 30th of July, 1943, during an attack on the enemy in which his own unit was not engaged. Corporal Allen voluntarily advanced through heavy enemy machine gun fire to rescue American battle casualties without assistance. He carried them from the field to safety no less than 12 soldiers. He collapsed from exhaustion only after all the wounded men had been rescued. He himself was wounded during the action. Corporal Allen's gallantry evoked the unstinted praise of all who witnessed it." In civilian life, Allen didn't talk about his exploits in New Guinea or North Africa, with his children having to find out about their father from others, particularly those he rescued. Following the war, Allen worked as a labourer and as a theatre orderly at the Ballarat Base Hospital. At home, he raised pigs and broke horses on an acreage outside the town. In his later life, he would work at the recreation gold mining town of Sovereign Hill, where he would demonstrate a horse-drawn Chilean mill used to crush quartz. Every Anzac Day, he would travel to Melbourne, where he would carry the banner of the 2nd 5th Battalion. Allen's health would deteriorate even further, and for the remainder of his life, he'd be plagued by post-traumatic stress disorder and poor health, with infrequent bouts of violence. Eventually, he would pass away on the 11th of May, 1982, of a heart attack exacerbated by diabetes, at the age of 65. Prior to his death, to commemorate his service, Puckapunyal Army Base in Victoria renamed their mess facilities the Corporal Leslie Allen MM Canteen on the 8th of December 1979, making it the first piece of Army property named after someone who was not a Victoria Cross recipient. For someone who didn't seek glory or fame for simply doing his job, he was considered a homegrown hero by the people of Ballarat, who still, to this day, fondly remember the tall, gentle giant. And on the 70th anniversary of the Battle of Mount Tambu, a documentary was released chronicling his service, and calls were renewed for him to be invested with the Victoria Cross for his actions on that day. I personally believe that this claim is valid, and I also believe there are several other stretcher bearers throughout Australia's military history equally deserving of Australia's highest award for gallantry. However, most people only know him by the photo taken by George Short, and even few know his story. However, that is not entirely true outside Australia. In 2014, Swedish heavy metal band Sabaton dedicated the Ballad of the Bull in their Heroes album, and on a state visit in 2019, the Australian Prime Minister gave a bronze statue of that very same photo to the serving United States President as an enduring symbol of Australia and America's ongoing alliance. I will admit, I did find out about him through Sabaton. And that was the story of the Bull, Leslie Allen. Next time on I Was Only Doing My Job, it's the 27th of September 1917 during the Battle of Polygon Wood, during the Third Battle of Ypres. Australia's official war photographer, Frank Hurley, approaches the position of the 45th Battalion, Australian Imperial Force. While there, he takes a photo of an Australian soldier surrounded by captured German equipment. That photo would go down as one of the most famous photos he would take of the war. Next episode, I look into the service, life, and experiences of the souvenir king of the AIF, Private John Barney Hines. Thanks for listening to the I Was Only Doing My Job podcast, a Doc Network production. I would really appreciate it and would help out the show if you would share this or leave a comment on Spotify or Google Podcasts or anywhere you listen to podcasts, as it really helps others find the show. If you want to know more about today's episode with photos, show notes, and transcripts, head over to www.thedocnetwork.net and follow the show on IWODMJ on Instagram. Don't worry, there'll be a link in the description. If you want to follow me for more history hijinks and random nerdery, you can follow me on practically everything at Doc Winters. Once again, my name is Ross. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time. Bye.